I saw a hand there and a hand. How about this gentleman first and then that lady? All right, so that gentleman in the middle, and then you will be the next.
Thank you very much for the very interesting talk. I'm Motohikawa from Japan, Hokkaido. As a student, I'm really interested in the global university peace sports. And as a Japanese, it's not really hard to imagine how beneficial it is that as a Japanese who are living in a really peaceful society, it must be very interesting to talk to and discuss conflict topics with students from countries in which some conflicts are going on. But what do you think are the motivation or purpose for students who are not from Japan, like from Myanmar and those countries that they have conflicts? Why would they join the peace sports seminar, and what did they learn?
Yeah, thank you. I think you saw the video, and you saw that people from Myanmar or Sri Lanka or other countries that that experienced conflict and wars in a very recent days have joined. And there are so many students or the universities, that want to be engaged in the peace sports programs, because for them, peace building is actual need of today. So it's sometimes very interesting to see in a classroom of peace sports, the students from conflict area, say from Sri Lanka or Myanmar, ask, what is the lesson for the post-war peace building in Japan? And then Japanese students react, we do not know, because it's already 70 years or more, so we don't know the experience. Rather, they want to ask them to what's the situation of Sri Lanka and so on. So it's kind of a shame to see that in so-called peace nations, the value of being in a peace is kind of forgotten, and lessons from the war and the atrocities are really, really lost. It's really a shame to see, but I think you need to have that kind of dialogue in a setting where people from different contexts, meet each other and learn from each other. If you see some students from conflict area, I think you would immediately want to go back to the libraries of Japan, for example, and study how this war, developed, and how we created peace from there. So by having that kind of multicultural or different background communication, it would inspire you and to regain what you have lost from your history.
I think that lady earlier had a hand up. No? No? Okay. Wait, I think is the lady in the red, the green scarf? Did you have your hand up?
Oh, okay. Yes,
I think you had a hand.
Okay. I think there are two different issues here. One is about peace building of all kinds of conflicts, and the other is dealing with the anti-nuclear threat. In the Taiwan context, the anti-nuclear threat is, I think, somewhat attenuated. First of all, Taiwan had the opportunity to develop a bomb, and it decided not to. Two, it has voted against developing more nuclear power stations. And three, it has been prevented from attending all these international bodies in which these treaties are made. So the whole nuclear context for Taiwan, I don't see as part of the curriculum here. It has made its proper decisions, and it has been prevented of acting further on the global stage. In terms of peace conflict, peace and conflict, that's a different question. So I think there are really two different questions here, at least as far as Taiwan is concerned.
Thank you. And I think indeed, right, if I were to share, I think, I've been living in Hong Kong, and I think the past few months I experienced a very bizarre phenomenon where a society can turn from so peaceful to suddenly some unrest situation really becomes a part of our daily life. As many of you guys probably seen on the news, all the universities had a sudden stop of the semester. In our particular university, I had to turn everything online. In Chinese University, this semester just terminated. And that really brings home this feeling that, wow, we have been living in peaceful time, or we have taken what we call peace for granted. But sometimes just with one political or social issue, something can trigger towards a society that suddenly get thrown into this moment of confusion or chaos. And so I agree. I feel that nuclear weapon, warheads, all these issues seems quite far away from the context of Taiwan, maybe Hong Kong, or General East Asia per se. But I think conflicts are actually everywhere. It's just a matter of what kind of trigger is going to bring it out on a greater level. So maybe we can take this opportunity. Maybe is that kind of peace, I guess, peace education in peaceful zones. Would you do it differently? Like when you talk about nuclear, deterrence and all that, or prohibition doesn't ring a bell. What else can you talk about?
Well, I think yeah, I agree to the points that you've raised, but at the same time, it's really important for anyone to understand what nuclear weapons are. The problems related to nuclear weapons or nuclear technology precisely or accurately, because in a world with nuclear weapons, any conflict can be led to a nuclear war. That's even for those countries or for people in living countries without nuclear weapons, or countries that committed not to have nuclear weapons, any armed conflict can lead to a nuclear devastation. And in this globally independent world, no country can be free from the threat. So in that sense, regardless of the policy of the government, it's fair to have some sort of attention to that.
There's another question from the audience. This relates to, once again, the online platforms. So earlier we kind of briefly mentioned about online media, social media, as it can be taken as a form of violence, cyberbullying, cyber, hate speech, and so on. How about video games? Online video games where violence oftentimes is in the center of it. And when a mass number of the generation at the moment is so drawn to this online entertainment, doesn't that feed into something that goes against the peace education that you guys are promoting? How do you guys combat this new form of violence?
Yeah, so actually, in the actual armed military combat, video game type of components are introduced. And in many meetings and discussions, I'm frequently asked, what would you do after nuclear weapons are eliminated? And then the next issue will be robotic weapons or armed drones and all those machines without people become weapons, and it is used, or it is increasingly used. And already there is a report in the US military that those machine-based military operation is triggering kind of effects on those personnel. PlayStation syndrome. It is a kind of naming for that. So the video games, I do not want to, how to say, just dismiss the existence of those games, and there is a kind of a amusement value and so on. Nonetheless, there is a certain risk that it eliminates the sense of fear or pain, and get people's sense very much careless of that part of the consequences of violence. So there is a serious, potentially bad behaving elements in those part of the technology, I think.
Maybe just time for one more question. Ooh, suddenly we have everyone who wants to raise questions. Maybe that gentleman over there?
Thank you for your representation. Currently, I'm studying medicine in Chang'an University, and I have a question. Is that I know most of people, we want to approach peace in our daily lives, but sometimes the environment changes so rapidly, so that all the information floods in, and it seems so overwhelming for us to totally understand the situation. Just like current social events happening in Hong Kong. Like Hong Kong government and Hong Kong people and Chinese government, they all hold different opinions. And sometimes it is very hard for them to sit down and have a rational conversation with each other. So the question I want to ask is that how can we approach peace in such a rapid changing society? Yes, thank you.
Maybe everyone will keep your question very short, and we'll take all of you, and then we will answer together. So yes, the lady. Do we have a microphone? And I think I saw one more hand here. Maybe I'll just one more. So everyone, if you stay there real quick, then we can answer them. Yes.
Thank you. I learned about global citizenship education in South Africa, so I want to bring in South perspective. In the program, I see mentioned more about like experiential learning for the students. How would you say about like local involvement, like for locals to voice up themselves? And because sometimes like humanitarian like promotion, it can become too simplified as well. Only like, for example, we have heard about voluntary tourism. How would you respond to that?
So I guess you're asking the question, when we do experiential learning, how do we put in a local context that is really relevant to the learner, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think maybe this gentleman.
Thank you. I thank you for the bringing in of the need for more emphasis on empathy in the classroom, and especially in the secondary school classroom. Being a history teacher in a secondary school at a Quaker school in New York City, has spent a number of years thinking about peace education in the secondary school history classroom, and I wonder if the United Nations or your particular group are interested in expanding the Peace Boat mission beyond the university idea to a large idea, maybe similar to the scale at which you talked about with the treaty to ban nuclear weapons, as a way of strengthening international organizations like the UN and the kind of pressure that they can put on governments to reform educational standards. As it is now, there's very little emphasis on peace education in the secondary school curriculum because of emphasis on other
Sorry.
Just other priorities.
Are you teaching in Taiwan or are you teaching in the U.S.? Are you talking about the U.S. context or the Taiwan context?
Really in any country. I teach in New York City
right now, okay.
But I live in Taipei right now, so
okay.
it's both are important to me.
Thank you.
My kids are in school here in Taiwan right now.
I see. Great. Real quick, this lady and this gentleman, and we have to close. So was there? Oh, your pass. Okay. So how about this gentleman? I have several questions regarding education, so I think we can answer them together. Yes.
In your slides, you have shown us a very interesting figure of the number of warheads of different countries. I was wondering whether you can elaborate a little more on the statistics of the numbers for the last decades, from year to year. And in your organization, do you have the roadmap of how to reduce these numbers in the next decade?
Okay, so if I may suggest, maybe we can answer this immediate question. It's more of an isolated question regarding your roadmap to reduce the warheads. And I think we have two questions regarding how do we really implement classroom teaching, especially maybe secondary school, experiential learning included. Lastly, I think a great general question, how do we handle peace in this fast-changing environment when things are changing too fast with too much information? Okay, so this one, and then the education question, and the last one.
Thanks. So for the roadmap of the reduction of nuclear weapons, we have so many plans already that experts or international commissions or UN agencies have been presented. And 10 years will be enough for the elimination of the total existing 13,000 nuclear warheads, based on the experience that immediately after Cold War in early 1990s, between 1,000 to 2,000 nuclear warheads are annually reduced. So it's technically possible. So it's a matter more about matter of political will. So I don't touch into the details of that. But now we have clear prohibition at the treaty level. So taking 10 or more years, concrete steps can be in place, starting from some sort of a reduction of the role of nuclear weapons, and then go to quantities and numbers of those weapons. And I can respond if you have some more specific questions later after the session is closed. And for the learning process, so Peaceport is also learning from other entities like our partners in Africa, or sometimes in Australia, or university institutions in Latin America. And in each part of the world, they have their own way of learning process or exchange programs, study programs. So we are always discussing about the development of those programs. And it's not Peaceport alone to make everything. Rather, we are always introducing the existing program from the local partners. So, and also UN agencies are very good friends of us, and they have their own programs. For example, UN ODA, Office of Disarmament Affairs, have the youth-oriented programs on the disarmament education. So we are working together with them for those, through those partnerships. So in pursuing those development and the enhancement of the partnership, we are always making the program be better. So in the process, I think we can further communicate and make some sort of progress. So if you have any specific ideas for collaboration, we are always open for that. And for the big questions for this, how to make peace, or like in this situation, I think it's really difficult to provide you a simple answer. But for any change for a better society, or a better world, people's action to stand up and voice up, speak up, is really, really important. That must be respected. So, you know, any change, for example, ending slavery, or abolishing nuclear weapons, or any human rights or democracy or whatever, small action, direct action matters. At the same time, it needs to always be engaged into dialogue, engage in different sectors. For example, in the case of ICAN, we really fight for abolition of nuclear weapons. We demonstrate, we make some sort of direct actions, but at the same time, we always talk with governments, including the governments of nuclear armed states, for dialogue and negotiation. While understanding such negotiation will not bring about any immediate solution, but still having this door for dialogue open is really key element. So always peace will be achieved through such direct actions, the combination of direct actions and open and inclusive dialogue.
Thank you. If I were made to close, as an educator myself, I'm also constantly learning. Recently, I took my students to visit this institution called United Worlds College. It's a pretty famous, educational institution around the world. They have a number of campuses around the world. They do have one in Hong Kong, and the mission statement of the school is to promote peace education. And I learned something really interesting. Let's say in a lecture hall like this, students from day one entering the school are taught a certain kind of sign language. So for example, when someone's talking, you agree, you just do this. You'd have to say agree, just do this. And if you disagree, they have another sign language. But one thing that really touched my heart was they do this thing called, if you feel offended by someone's, speech, you just do this. And interestingly, you just do this. It's like, hey, I'm hurt. I'm offended by your language. And the speaker, without interrupting the speaker would take note of it, and that person would be given the priority to speak first in response. And I think I learned so much that, that is a day-to-day, little practice of what you talked about, inclusive discussion and dialogues, and it's something that's so easy to be implemented, but I never thought of it. So I think there are definitely long ways and many different ways we can create and try to brainstorm about how we actually implement such kind of peace education into our daily lives in different local contexts. So thank you for illuminating us with many decades of hard work that you've been doing in this field. And with that, can we give Mr. Kawasaki a really, really warm round of applause? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And may this will be the first step towards more peaceful dialogue on peace education. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.